be corrected. What do you think, Dave?
No, I agree. I totally agree. And Ted had said that. He said he was always messing with the track listing,
right,
even after the print deadline. And unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to look at the back album covers and compare them to what the real track listing was and say which is better and which is worse. And I had trouble with that anyway, because the track listings of the albums are so ingrained in my head.
Right.
That really unless I had such a problem with them the first time, those are canon. So I usually don't mess with those. I know he said they weren't what ifs because they were printed on the back album cover, but I think they are, so I'm not going there.
Oh.
Well, that's my cop out, and I'm sticking to it.
That's your cop out, and you're sticking to it. Okay, cool.
But it's interesting to see what Ted and the band had wanted for a track listing and then changed it at the last minute anyway. These days, I'm randomly sequencing Van Halen songs anyway, which is how a lot of music is consumed these days. So, you basically just make your own track listing for anything you want.
That's right. Well, Dave, believe it or not, we're only on letter number 3, and he's already coming in hot.
Look, up in the sky, it's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's Midwest fucking Ron. That's right, it's Midwest fucking Ron with a double letter, and he says here, Dave, I found both the Al Dukes, producer of the David Lee Roth radio show, and Joel Selvin, co-author of Red, interviews very interesting and entertaining. Keep digging, guys. This is great stuff. Thanks, Midwest Ron. Well, thank you, Mr. Ron. A compliment from you is like an eclipse. Every once in a while, you got to take it in and savor it as it comes, because you never know when it's coming back. That's right. That's right. And he also talks...
thank you, sir. Appreciate the kind words.
Right. And then he talks a little bit here concerning the New York Times photo with David Lee Roth wearing a green jumpsuit for painting. In 1984, the band gave out promotional flight suits to radio guys. I can confirm that what Dave is wearing in those New York Times photos is not one of those promo suits. What he has on looks military to me, but I have no further info, and he gave us some photos of those things, which is great. I happen to agree with you, Ron. I think the more closer look, the jumpsuit, I didn't exactly think it was the one that they gave out, but it was similar, which is I just joked around about it. But, however, I appreciate the clarification, my Dark Lord. Yeah, there we go. So he, so he comes back here, Dave, with another letter, believe it or not, because he can't get enough of us. He says, gents, I've been slowly consuming your May, Sam and Dave 2002 tour recap, and I thought I'd chime in with a couple of items so far. Number 1, I'm glad to hear that Quiet Dave stood his ground when the Other Half moniker tour took place. He was correct that it was 2006, although the official debut took place in 2005, October birthday bash in Cabo. Number 2, Quiet Dave incorrectly stated that the 2002 tour was the first time Sammy had fans on stage. Sam did this starting all the way back into 1997 on the post-Halen tour. Number 3, Louder Dave and Quiet Dave, to a lesser extent, tried to beat up Sammy for not putting more Van Halen songs in the set, and praised Dave for engineering a strong set of Van Halen material himself. Keep in mind that Sam was an artist outside of Van Halen for more than 10 years prior and for 5 years post his stint with the Brothers, and had a loyal fan following for that material. Dave, on the other hand, has been performing mostly a Van Halen set for years, and he gave us attached set lists. He also said, it's interesting to hear that your expectations were for an all-out Van Halen battle between the two. Those weren't mine, and I wonder what other people expected. Once again, keep up the great work. It's enjoyable to listen you guys talk Van Halen every month. P.S. Why do you think Dave dropped Unchained in 2002 set in favor of Ain't Talk About Love? Midwest fucking Ron. And he's putting us to the test here. So I got all kinds of answers for you, Ron. Number 1, talking about the Other Half moniker. Yes, we are so old that we talked about this twice. This is what happened. I'll reiterate it real quick. Dave and I saw Sam at the same venue in 2002 and 2006. We almost sat in the same seats, same area. And I kind of mixed them up because of that. Yes, of course it was 2006. That's when Mike came out. The Other Half, I bought the t-shirt. blah, blah, blah. But I did mix it up because of that reason. I apologize for that. So, yes, I will bow to you, my Dark Lord. So, number two, Quiet Dave incorrectly stated. He says about the 2002 tour, the first time Sammy had fans on stage. Now, I'm going to hold you there for a minute. Now, for Sam had fans on stage, you say as far back as 1997. However, I saw Sam in 1997 at the Beacon Theater in Manhattan, and I can tell you there, buddy, he wasn't having any fans on stage. So I have a feeling he might have done that here and there at some different venues. The Beacon Theater, it certainly wasn't set up to have fans on stage. However, he might have done it at other places. I know he was doing it as a way for his audience to sort of have some of that Cabo Wabo experience. You know what I mean?
Right.
That was the
so,
vibe.
And I mean, thanks for letting me know. I didn't know he had actually started doing that before 2002.
Right.
Interesting.
Exactly. Very interesting. So now also when he talks about me and Dave to a lesser extent beating up Stan for not putting on more Van Halen songs into the set. Well, listen, this might be a matter of opinion, but the tour for 2002 with David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar was a specialty boutique tour, and I felt the fans buying tickets were mainly Van Halen fans. Is not as much as Sammy fans, not as much as Dave fans, but mainly Van Halen fans. Van Halen at that point had not toured in 4 years. The crowd was starving for Van Halen, and Sam could do solo stuff anytime, in my opinion. But this was a mixed crowd. It was not just a Sammy crowd. And truth be told, in today's world, okay, in 2020, even though we're in a pandemic and no one's touring right now, they would have had a guaranteed set list. Like, for example, when Journey went out with Def Leppard, they, in their contract, had it set what songs they were going to play because they wanted to be a night of solid packed hits. I guarantee you, if that tour went on today, they would have a set of songs that they guaranteed the audience because people want what they bought. Sam had sort of a bad attitude about that tour from the beginning. He didn't want to do it. And he didn't realize that, his career wasn't in the greatest of shape at that point. He had come out of Van Halen. He had done a couple of solo things. He was on a little bit of a wind down. He will not admit this. Dave was certainly on the wind down. He was hanging on by a branch at this point.
Yeah.
So Dave was going to give the audience what they wanted, and I realize it sounds like I'm just praising Dave, but I think that he kind of had the spirit of what that tour was, and Sammy didn't get it. It's like Dave was doing one thing, like Dave wanted to kind of like have a little bit of an edge back and forth with Sam, maybe some like fun quips, almost like a boxing match, and he was going to do his Van Halen songs, and Sam would do his Van Halen songs. And as much as, like, Dave didn't participate in doing some sort of a duet, Sam didn't participate in the tour. I mean, he opened up with, like, Shaka Doobie and stuff. Like, I mean, he should have really been doing stuff to incite the fans. I mean, this was a Van Halen crowd. And
Right. And that was the whole point, this was the Van Halen tour without Van Halen.
Sam's
I don't
Halen
disagree
tour.
with you.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I don't disagree with you, Ron. Sammy had a career before Van Halen. He was continuing his career after Van Halen. But I feel, and Dave feels this too, that didn't matter. This was all about the two lead singers of Van Halen and who was going to kick butt with the Van Halen catalog.
Right.
Now, you want to sprinkle some solo songs in there? Fine.
Right.
That's great. And Dave and I go back about this all the time.
Yep.
Because Dave says he felt Sammy should have done more Van Halen songs.
Right.
And I don't necessarily disagree with you, but as I like to point out, that was the most Van Halen he had done to that point.
To the point, yeah,
so that
absolutely.
was a huge step for him.
Right, it was.
But you felt he should have just kept on taking that giant leap and gone.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily wrong. So, Ron, our expectations were, listen, this is a Van Halen show without Ed and Al. It's the two lead singers, and they should be banging out Van Halen songs.
Right.
And that was just our expectation and how we felt what it should have been. I mean, if it was just going to be, well, it just happens to be two guys who used to be in Van Halen, well, I mean, Dave had a solo career too. I mean, he had like how many albums did he have up until that time? 4? I think he had 4 solo albums.
5.
Up until that. Did he have 5?
Well, if you count the DLR album.
Oh, I always forget the EP.
Right,
I always forget the EP. Okay. All right. So, yeah. So, I mean, he could have easily done the same thing Sam did, but he didn't because he knew what the people wanted.
6
and
if you count the EP.
What Dave said. Mm-hmm. Sam, he kind of like missed the boat as to what the people wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, Sam has this thing where he's like, I'm not just the lead singer of Van Halen.
Right.
I'm a solo artist.
Right.
And that's all well and good.
That's
fine.
Yeah.
But let's face facts, Sam.
Right.
You will always be known. I mean, Sam, when you die, it's going to say former lead singer of Van Halen,
right.
Sammy Hagar,
right.
dead at blah, blah, blah.
Right, but you know what? It's not just that, though. It's not just that. That tour was sold as that. That's exactly how that was sold.
Exactly. But Sam has trouble admitting a lot of things.
He does.
And like you said before, either he didn't care or whatever. But anyway, we could harp on this for hours, obviously.
I know. Oh, please, I know.
So I see your point of view, Ron. I get where you're coming from. But Dave and I respectfully disagree as to what the expectations were and what the tour should have been. I mean, truth be told, but those two guys were screwing it up from beginning to end. I mean, those guys couldn't even get an official tour shirt with their two faces on it, which they could have made a ton of money, and they didn't because Dave and I were buying bootleg shirts in the parking lot. Right. Because those two guys just could not sit down and even agree on that.
With 6-finger hands.
Right, with the 6-fingered hand. Which I didn't notice for years, which my daughter had to point out.
Right, exactly. Who, by the way, is named Sammy.
Because I'm an accountant, so
that's right.
What does that tell you?
That's right. Let me just add this to Midwest, Ron. In regards to your last question, Ron, I think Ain't Talking About Love, the reason why it replaced Unchained is probably because Ain't Talking About Love is considered more essential. It's as classic as Van Halen as you get in terms of public perception and popularity. However, I think it's a mistake, to be honest with you. I can't imagine leaving Unchained off a set list for Roth, but whatever.
Well, Ain't Talking About Love is a better concert song. Obviously, I love Unchained.
Yeah.
But if you want to get the people riled up, hey, I mean, that's the song you include.
Yeah, it's kind of the ultimate Van Halen song.
Ain't Talking About Love. Wasn't that like one of the top songs that's been like in every Van Halen?
Yeah. It's the top. It's the ultimate Van Halen song for sure.
Right. Yeah.
In terms of public perception, my favorite happens to be Unchained, but that's okay. I love Ain't Talking About Love.
All right, let's move on to the next letter.
Letter number 4 comes from Dave Moses, the fourth Dave. He says, great podcast on Hagar's book. Your insights were awesome. I may disagree with you on some things from time to time, but most of the time you are spot on and shows you guys really know your stuff in the Van Halen universe. Here is a question for you. Where do you believe Ed got his stage moves from? Dave is supposedly from Jim Dandy, but what about Ed? Did they practice at Dave's house? What's known about their stage choreography seems a secret, or at least not as much talked about, even though I know Dave probably orchestrated most of it. Eddie jumps, shuffles, leaps, smiles, twists, and so forth. Keep those 4-hour podcasts coming. Hopefully no more phone hang-ups from Hagar author. Nice to have a spine, Joel. Dave Moses. Okay, well, he has 2 letters here. We're going to address the first one. Eddie's moves, in my opinion, are all his own. Much like his guitar licks, Eddie is 100% original with his little kicks and his shuffle and his jumps. He is basically just the best there is. I know it's subjective, but to me, there's no contest. He's colorful, he's creative, he's cute. Eddie's got all the different elements checked. All the boxes are checked for Ed, so I don't think Eddie's copying anybody. I don't think Eddie copies anybody for anything. Everything Eddie does is like an original. What do you think?
I feel like there's somewhat of a Pete Townsend influence in there.
Oh, Pete Townsend wishes.
I don't know. I mean, not like an exact replica or a duplicate. I don't know. That's just my 2 cents. Okay. Somebody wants to write it and tell me I'm wrong. You're probably right that I'm wrong, but that's just what I see as an influence.
Right. Okay.
Right.
Dave Moses, second letter. Great podcast about Dave's radio career. You guys are creating an encyclopedia database of Van Halenology. I hope you never run out of topics and guests. Dave, so riddle me this. Did Sam reinvent Van Halen when he joined, or did he just keep it going? Remember, Ed is the great innovator, and maybe no one could have kept Van Halen going like Sam was able to, but did he reinvent them or just keep them going? Van Halen, flag unfurled. Dave Moses the fourth, Dave. Well, I have to say, for certain, Sammy Hagar did both. He had a hand and a larger role in reinventing Van Halen, which in tail kept it going. So Eddie was, we all know, heading in a different direction musically, and I think Sam was the perfect kind of pop